Hi, I'm Brayden Burkhart, and this is the assignment 2 for EE329, the keypad. So pretty much what I got right here is a Nucleo with 4 LEDs connected to a 4x4 keypad. So we can actually test it out right here. So if I click on one of these basic keys, it will specify on the LEDs that number, ID, and binary. So in this case, 1 obviously is going to go to 1. For example, 5 will be 5, and so forth. So 0 reset it all. You can see here. I have A through D set to basically just hex, so that's going to be like 10 and whatnot. All right, cool. So we could take a look at the code real quick. So this is inside my main.c. Pretty much what I got set up is we first specify GPIO port C. That's gonna be the 4 LEDs, so that's why there's 4 stuff right there. And then we go down. I called keypad init, which we'll take a look at in a second. That's just gonna initialize the GPIO port and pins for the keypad itself. And then in my while loop, pretty much I'm just grabbing the get pressed key function, which we'll take a look at in a second. And that's going to save the key ID into pressed key. And basically pressed key is going to store that ID in int. And basically the reason why I have it stored separately is because I'm going to use it multiple times. So inside the if statement, we first see if it's greater than -1. -1 means nothing has been pressed. And if it is at -1, so anything above that 0 onwards, it's going to basically call the update LEDs function, basically through toggling with basically booleans, LED 1, 2, and 3, 4. Inside that function itself, pretty much we're just, I have those LED I have those LED, let me take a look here, parameter specified, pretty much just GPIO C, resetting all the pins using the BRR, and then using the BSRR, basically seeing which LEDs are on, which ones will be off from that function. So pretty simple in that case. So take a look at the keypad.h. Pretty much for this header, all I'm doing is basically abstracting some stuff. So basically what port is the road's going to be, what port is the column's going to be, in this case GPIO port A, GPIO port D, and the pins that are specifying, as well as also the function declarations. In this case, I assume that the 2 ports are just basically going to be used only for the keypad, as there's a ton of ports already on Nucleo, so most users won't really have to worry about that in this case. So for the keypad.c, first in the init, like I said, that's just going to specify like the mode, speeds, and whatnot for the 2 ports. I have 2 separate functions, one called row detect, one called column detect. That's pretty much going to go through. That's going to set the column or row, depending on what function it is, high, and it's going to basically read using the IDR what the data is going to be for that. So in this case, I'm basically just doing some masking with the pins that were declared in that header file to basically pull all that individual data bits out. And basically you're just returning a 1, 2, 3, or 4 if they've been clicked on the row or header, or sorry, row or column, returning a 0 if it hasn't been. So those are actually being used then in the get pressed key ID function, pretty much just grabbing the row and column at that time, seeing if either one's clicked. If either one detects nothing's been pressed, it's just going to return a 0, aka no button's been pressed. Otherwise, it's going to do some basic math operations. That's just going to be row -1 times 4 plus the column. Basically, as it says in the comment right there, it's just going to return an ID of 1 to 16, depending on what button's been pressed. Finally, I don't really like having the key ID, just because if we take a look at this, pretty much the way it's going to be then is it's going to have 1, 2, 3, and A is going to be 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, and that misaligns the numbers in the keypad, which is kind of funky. And while a user could abstract that into like the main.c, I want to have a helper function inside keypad.c to basically do that for you. So very rudimentary, but in this case, you basically change just depending on what kind of keypad you have. In this case, it's a 4x4, so I'm gonna basically remap everything out to match with like the actual symbols on that keypad. So that way in the main.c, we'll call get pressed key. Although you could also just do get pressed key ID and just return the raw values, and that would work fine. And that's it for this assignment.